Hello everyone, it's me Clayton. I just finished watching Saw X, starring Tobin Bell and Shawnee Smith. Now, the Saw franchise and me have had a long history when it comes to the films. I've seen basically all of them when it comes down to renting the old films from a local video store to watching some of the latest films in theaters, such as Jigsaw in 2016 and even Spiral from the Book of Saw in 2021. Now, with the Saw franchise, it basically is a mix between genuinely interesting storytelling and an excuse for violence and torture of the nth degree that basically became the highlight of the franchise after the first few films kept it mostly either implied or done to make up for its low budget. But this film happens to actually use its prequel premise to make for possibly the most heartfelt story in the Saw franchise by their standards, and to get us to actually sympathize with Tobin Bell's John Kramer. Well, let's get to the story, shall we? The story revolves around John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, who, in a last-ditch effort to cure his cancer in between the events of Saws 2 and 3, he decides to head to Mexico, where apparently there's a clinic that has a revolutionary way to cure cancer, with both a drug cocktail and a full-on surgery. But Jigsaw realizes that the whole thing is phony after he ends up spending his money there, and he realizes that there's been several other people who've been conned out of their cash as well. So he, along with his apprentice Amanda Young, played by Shawnee Smith, they decide to capture everyone who was involved with this con artist operation, and he decides to put them into his most deadly games in the series to date. But that's all I'll say about the story. The story here surprisingly takes a long time to focus on John's feelings about his cancer and also about how he has some sympathetic qualities here. He's still the serial killer we know and love when it comes down to his philosophy and when it comes down to his main MO, but at the same time it acknowledges that the people who are in these traps basically deserve to be there, especially considering with some of the Saw films, it felt like some of the victims really didn't deserve to be there because they were just tangentially related to the person who was responsible for a lot of these issues. Even films I like, such as Saw 6, have this problem. But here, it feels like every single person not only knew what they were signing up for, but they knew they were screwing over the lives of dying people just to get a quick buck, and that those people are the real parasites here. So surprisingly, we get antagonists who we find even more morally bankrupt than Jigsaw and Amanda themselves. It's weird to see them in the protagonist role, but it surprisingly works here. And with a budget of only $13 million, they still managed to get some pretty gnarly gore effects for the traps. There's a trap that goes onto a person's eyeballs that's sadly only done in a imagination sequence. There's a trap that forces someone to take out part of their brain. There's another one that forces them to cut off their leg. Granted, removing body parts and pulling out pieces of your innards have been done in Saw before, but never in this specific way. And the final trap, without spoiling it, is one that is probably comes out of someone's depraved mind, the most depraved mind that I've seen in the series so far. But I'd also expect nothing less from a Saw finale. Even compared to other Saw finale traps, it's definitely one that almost had me gagging. But at the same time, I appreciate that the filmmakers are able to one up each other, even in a film that takes place in between one of my favorite Saw films and one of my least favorite Saw films. So, yeah, as far as the Saw films go, this would probably rank among the top films. Probably near the first two Saw films when it comes to my overall enjoyment of them. But if you're a big fan of the series, you'll probably enjoy it. And if this is the last time we see Tobin Bell in this role, I'd say it's a pretty solid send-off. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. See you next time.